Hey everybody, Mr. Covey here, and I'm going to do problems number 5 through 8 on the practice test. Okay. So this first one is division. Division is basically the same as multiplication. The only difference is you have to take the second fraction and flip it. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is just rewrite it. I'm going to take the second fraction. Keep the first fraction the same. Take the second fraction and write it as multiplication. Put the second fraction flipped. Okay? And now it just becomes a multiplication problem. You guys know how to do this multiplication problem. I got 4 different parts to try and factor. I'm going to factor each of the 4 different parts. X squared minus 16, x plus 4, x minus 4. X squared plus 6x plus 8, x plus 4, x plus 2. The blue part doesn't factor, pushing it all together to be one fraction now. The red part, I can take a GCF of 2 out, and I'm left with x minus 4. Got all the parts factored. I'm going to cross out stuff that is the same on the top and the bottom. Be careful. Pretty much everything crosses out here. All I'm left with is 2, but that 2 is in the denominator, it's in the bottom. So my answer isn't 2, it's 1/2, because that 2 that's left over is in the bottom of the fraction. Just be a little careful about that. Cool? Okay, so for 6, 7, and 8, we are adding or subtracting. And in this case, all 3 of these are adding. Okay? When you're adding, the important thing to think about is whether or not they have the same denominators. So number 6, although it looks complicated, is actually a good one because the 2 fractions have a common denominator already. They already have the same denominator. So when you're adding 2 things that already have the same denominator, you just add the numerators. After you add the fractions together, don't forget you have to try and simplify them. How do you try and simplify them? You try and factor them. Okay? 10x squared plus 5, I can take a 5 out of the top and the bottom. Excuse me, out of the first thing and the second thing. So what am I left with? 2x squared plus 1. I just have 2x squared plus 1 on the bottom. And so I can cancel that 2x squared plus 1 on the top and the bottom. And my answer is just 5. The trickier problems happen when you have different denominators, like this. And when you have different denominators, it helps to start by factoring them. Okay? The x minus 2 doesn't factor, but 3x minus 6 does factor. So the left fraction I'm going to leave the same. The right one I'm going to factor the denominator by taking out a 3. Okay? In order to add the fractions together, they need to have the same denominator. I need to find out what the common denominator is. I need to write them both with the same denominator. If you look at the 2 denominators, the smallest denominator that contains them both has to have an x minus 2 and also has to have a 3. That is the common denominator. It's the smallest thing that contains them both. Okay? If you look at your left fraction, we just changed the denominator by multiplying by 3. So what do I need to do to the numerator? Multiply by 3. If you look at the right fraction, I didn't do anything to the denominator, so I don't need to do anything to the numerator. Now that I have a common denominator, I'm going to add together the numerators and make it a single fraction. The last thing I should do is try and factor and simplify this. How can I factor? Well, at the top, I can take out a 3. Now I have a 3 on the top and the bottom. I can cross those off, and I'm left with x plus 2, x minus 2. And that's my final answer. Okay. Number 8 is again a tricky one because I have different denominators. Okay. There's no factoring I can do. So I just have to figure out what these common denominators are going to be. X minus 4 and x plus 3 have nothing in common with each other. They're just 2 completely different denominators. And when your denominators are completely different, remember back to this one, My two denominators were kind of similar to start. This one, they're completely different. The common denominator that you use is just the two denominators multiplied by each other. There's no other choice for a common denominator besides just the two denominators multiplied by each other. Okay. If you look at your left fraction, what did I do to the denominator? I multiplied by x plus 3. So what do I need to do with the numerator? Multiply by x plus 3. If you look at the right fraction, what did I do to the denominator? I multiplied by x minus 4. So what do I need to do with the numerator? Multiply by x minus 4. I'm ready to push this all together. And now I need to do some, excuse me, simplifying. But I cannot do this. I can't emphasize enough. I'm not allowed to do this and this and this. The reason I'm not allowed to do that is that there's this big plus sign in the middle that's keeping it from being factored. It is not factored the way it is written. In fact, in order to try and factor it, I actually need to kind of work backwards and distribute a little bit. That big plus sign in the middle is kind of messing everything up. So what I'm actually going to do is do some simplifying on top by distributing. The bottom's going to stay the same. I've successfully made it into one fraction. Now I'm just trying to simplify it. The combined like terms up top. In order to try and simplify this, I'm going to try and factor the top. How do you factor the top? Well, I'm going to take out a 3. And I'm going to look at this part, and I'm going to see if that little part there factors. What multiplies to -8 adds to 5? I can't think of anything. Nothing multiplies to -8 and adds to 5. What that means is I'm done with this problem. There's no simplifying I can do. There's no more factoring. I've made it into one fraction, and that's the one fraction. All right, that concludes this video.